I was just going to say, I think the only one I have, which is the one I hear I usually hear everyone where it's why can't you use beef stew as a password?
Why?
Why?
Because it's not stroganoff.
I will be using that joke today, and I think my husband's gonna love it. That's so
Yeah.
that's so good.
Yeah.
Today is exciting because this episode happens to be our World Password Day special. We'll be talking about, of course, our favorite topic, passwords, but that'll just be our starting point. In Watchtower Weekly, you'll learn how some people are using AI to generate their passwords and why that might not be such a great idea. We're also going to cover some updates that just came to 1Password. And then from there, we'll dive into Crash Course, where we're going to break down Entropy, what it means, why it matters, and what actually makes a password strong. Later on in the episode, Wade will be sitting down with Jacob DePriest, 1Password's CISO. Wade, how was that interview, by the way?
It went well. Jacob is my boss, so that's always fun. But Jacob's really cool. He's very smart, very articulate. There you go. And always a pleasure to talk to. So it was a great time.
Nice. So stay tuned if you want to learn more about strong authentication, the future of identity security, and what happens when AI agents need access to our accounts and systems. Do either of you remember the first password that you ever came up with? I remember mine. It was, I love camp. I was a camp counselor. I loved camp, and I thought that was really clever. Because a phrase, I remember, right? That was one of the suggestions when you're coming up with a password. Obviously, that's not super hard to probably figure out, but yeah.
I've never even thought about trying to remember the first password. I remember in high school, they gave us an email address, and I remember the password only being 8 characters long. And this was early 2000s. And I remember thinking, I'm like, this is way too short.
I remember doing banking and the password limit being 8 characters, and that wasn't that
God.
long. So that wasn't that long ago where like the bank fields were. So, banks have caught up, which is a good thing. But yeah, it's a wild world out there. Before we kick off Watchtower Weekly, though, we have some very exciting news to share. In celebration of World Password Day on May 7th, we're also running a giveaway. That's right, free stuff. We are giving away 1 free year of 1Password to 3 winners. To enter, all you have to do is subscribe to our Random but Memorable YouTube channel and comment on this episode with your favorite 1Password tip or trick. For our audio listeners, you can find the link to our YouTube channel in the show notes. It has been a while since we've hosted a giveaway, so definitely get involved and let us know your go-to or most used 1Password trick. We'll share 3 of our favorites on the next episode, and they'll each win 1 free year of 1Password. The giveaway is now open and closes midnight on May 20th, so you'll have 1 week to get your entries in. As always, all the terms and conditions are also in the show notes. So now I'm curious. Allie, Wade, do either of you have a 1Password tip or trick that's your favorite?
I do.
Allie,
QR codes for Wi-Fi.
You beat me to it. After Rue told us that, I was like, oh my God, that's a thing? Like, why did I know that? As someone who programs a lot, using 1Password command line, OP, right, has been very cool lately. And using that with AI has been my new favorite thing, I'll say.
I use it for, my favorite thing is to not use it for like anything technical, but to use it for notes. We've had some medical stuff going on in the family lately, but like updated medication lists, like when did you last get your tetanus shot, all that fun stuff that, is completely boring. But like when I go in and I can just search and it's all there and I have everything in one spot, like that to me, it's not just about just the logins. It's about securely storing all that other, life stuff that you never know when you're going to need it. And when you need it quick. So make sure you're up to date on tetanus. Sorry.
Oh my God. Every time I get poked by something, I'm like, when did I have that shot? Those are some good ones. So let's get started with some Watchtower Weekly, our segment where we unpack the latest news and trends in cybersecurity and privacy. This week, we're starting with a trend that feels very 2026. People asking AI to generate their passwords. So this sounds convenient, right? You open ChatGPT, you ask for, hey, give me a strong password, and it gives you something that looks secure, lots of symbols, lots of numbers, an uppercase in there, a couple letters, and it gets the job done. But a recent investigation by PC Magazine found that these AI-generated passwords aren't nearly as strong as they seem. In fact, many of them can be cracked and surprisingly quickly, sometimes in under an hour. So today we're unpacking why this is and why this might be one of those cases where AI is the wrong tool for the job. So does this surprise you guys? And why do you think people are actually turning to AI to create passwords?
You know what first came to mind was thinking about AI being really good at mathematical equations or like formulas. Like I'm wondering if there's something about the way it generates a password. If they're generating passwords in a way that LLMs think, of course, it would be easy for an LLM to maybe crack that password. Like, I'm wondering if there's
See,
something
and
there.
I'm thinking it's more like it's a learning model. Like it's a large language learning model. It's ingesting our password histories, it's ingesting all those breach reports, it's ingesting all that information. So when it's, thinking of things, like it's just giving you something. It's not necessarily trying to create. Like I think that's why it's not a creation tool. It's able to take stuff that's existing and modify it a smidge, but it's not generating brand new inclusive content that's just like, wow, this is something we've never seen before. And in general, I find AI tends to be nice to humans. So it's trying to give you something that it thinks that you're going to remember. So it's trying to help you, which ends up being not something that's going to be strong enough to actually keep a human or a computer out.
Both good points. Both good points. So here's the interesting part. The issue isn't that the AI is bad. It's that it works in a completely different way than what a password requires, right? So very much how Ali was saying, AI models are designed to recognize and generate patterns based on data they've seen before. That's what makes them great at writing, right? So they're doing calculations in the back end. If I write an A here, what's most likely going to be the next letter, right? Summarizing and coding and all that is all based on those mathematical equations. But passwords need the opposite of patterns. They need true randomness. And research shows AI-generated passwords tend to follow a predictable structure, reuse similar formats, and even repeat outputs for multiple attempts. So even if a password looks complex, it may actually be much easier for attackers to guess because it follows patterns that cracking tools are specifically designed to exploit. So you theoretically could go ask ChatGPT to be like, hey, generate me a bunch of passwords that you would give out to people, and it would supply you those passwords. And then you could possibly use them.
It's a much more articulate way of saying what I was trying to describe.
Yeah, yes, very, very much so. From a security perspective, like that was my first thought.
Yeah.
There are a bunch of lists out there that are just filled full of passwords that people have used. One of the big ones is the Rocky list, I believe it's called. And it's usually just thousands and thousands, if not millions of passwords that you would put into an application, and then it just goes and tries to guess passwords. You could theoretically improve that list with an LLM if you somehow kept asking it for passwords that it would normally give to people. I actually have not thought about it this way until we were discussing this, to tell you the truth.
It's interesting because I notice, and I'm sure both of you have noticed, there are tells if somebody has written something using an LLM, right? There's certain ways of writing. Obviously, the M dash is a big one, but there's other things, if the negative before, it's not this, but it's that. Like there's kind of these tells, and this reminds me of that, but for passwords, like there's probably tells, right?
I would think so, especially if you have memory on and the passwords are being specially tailored towards you, right? So if you've already told the LLM your dog, may probably use that as your password because it knows. I think the takeaway here is pretty simple. AI is incredibly useful, but it's not built for everything. Password generation is one of the areas where we already have tools designed specifically for security, using true randomness and encryption. AI gives you something that looks random. A password manager gives you something that actually is. And in security, the difference really matters. Okay, so let's change gears. Ali, I hear we have some 1Password updates to talk about.
We do. We just put out a blog post that details a bunch of the improvements that we've made to 1Password. First is the Credential Exchange Protocol, CXP, and the Credential Exchange Format. So this is a new way of importing and exporting data, which doesn't involve a CSV file. And I think something that folks are going to be very excited to hear is that this includes passkeys. We know that people have been asking about passkey portability, and we're very excited to say that you can now move them between password managers. This is a new way of migrating data, and it's live in Password for iOS and Android. Sarah, I would love to hear from you because I know you have a lot of experience in customer support. How important is smooth and simple import processes for our customers when it comes to passwords?
For us, really important. I think that's been, that was one of the more frustrating parts when passkeys first came out, because passkeys came out but there wasn't a good way to take them and then transport them into something else. And so one of the foundations within 1Password is just that the data is yours. Yours is the client, the person who's putting it in there. It doesn't belong to us at 1Password. It's not for us. So if you want to take it and move it and put it here or put it there or whatever, we want to make sure you have a way to get it in and get it out. So finding a way to make that happen and make it happen easily is just really, really important, because again, data ownership, who owns your data, who owns your information. And so making sure it lives with the customer is great. So having, a CXF format where you can actually download things and move them over to where you're going to, so that it's not something that's, really, really difficult. And I'm really excited that we've been able to bring that together. And so if you're interested in more, definitely go check out that blog post.
Next up is better password creation on iPhones and iPads. So we're now supporting Apple's native passwords API. So you can generate and save passwords right in the account creation flow. No need to switch apps, which will be really great for folks. And we haven't forgot about our Android users. Autofill depends on several system settings, and we've now made it simpler to go through and check that all of them are set up correctly. Wade, are any of these exciting for you?
Makes me really happy that people don't forget us Android users sometimes. I really feel like a second-class citizen when I shouldn't be. No, it's super cool. I didn't realize that iPhones and iPads had a native password API. I'm more interested now in that and figuring out actually how that works and how it logs as a security person. So maybe I need to go look into that later on today.
Well, our blog post is going to cover that and a few other exciting 1Password updates. So we'll make sure to link it in the article in the show notes. And we hope that you all check it out and let us know what you think.
So with all of that exciting 1Password news, it's time to actually transfer over into our crash course, which talks a little bit about passwords and security. And we know what's going to make a bad password, fluffy cat 123, not gonna make it onto the good list. But it's important to talk about entropy and how that makes a good password. Wade, as our resident security expert, I'm going to hand it over to you to tell us more about it.
Sure. And I'll make sure I'll say entropy and make sure I pronounce it correctly, because I definitely know I pronounce it wrong sometimes. But before we start, I'm going to ask you both a question. What should you not do when picking passwords, especially using fluffy 123?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I just would not pick a password. I would not it's got to be long and random, and it's got to have stuff. And I'm going to rely on a password manager to do that for me.
Perfect. That's absolutely right. So when it comes to picking a password, most of us know the basics, right? You make sure that it's not too short, that you choose a variety of characters to make it harder to guess, and definitely don't just use the word password or even add 123 at the end of it. The idea of making passwords more complex has a name, entropy, and it's an important part of online security. So what is entropy? Generally speaking, entropy is the measure of how chaotic or random something is. When we apply the idea to password, entropy is the measure of how difficult your password is to guess or how strong your password is. Passwords that have a higher entropy are harder to guess because they have more possible solutions. A password like 1234 would be pretty easy to figure out, so we can say it has low entropy. Are there any other classic examples of bad passwords that you two hear all the time, or a password that your friends have shared or your families? They're like, hey, this is what we use to log into the computer.
Yes, my parents using their grandkids' names and birthdays. Like it's all the time.
Phone number, phone number, phone number, birth dates, all of those good things. Sports teams, there's a lot of them out there. And every time somebody is like, I don't understand, and then they show me their password, they do their thing, and I'm like, well, I think I have an idea of what's happening. And, it's the 1, 2, 3 and or the exclamation mark at the end.
Exclamation mark is always a big one, right? Yeah. Just add that at the end real quick. Yeah, it's easy.
Yeah.
My parents surprisingly had a really good password. They have, I'm not going to state it, but a large electronic device right near their computer, and they use the model number of that device as their password, and it's long. And I'm like, that's semi-cheating, but whatever. I can only get them to use one password so much, so I'll take it.
You got to take the wins where you can get them.
Right? Like to get into the computer, fine. You guys don't want to use a fingerprint sensor? I get it. All right, but... So obviously there's some important factors in measuring entropy of a password. The length of the password is a big one. The longer the password, the harder it is to guess, and the higher the entropy. A 20-character password is going to be dramatically more difficult to guess than any 8-character one because the difference in possible values is exponentially higher. Yeah, remember I was talking about exponents earlier. The 1Password password generator actually uses a 20 characters as a default length if you're curious. And I will tell you, I have stumbled across websites where my password wasn't working, and it's because they wouldn't accept a 20 character. And I'm like, I can't believe you guys right now. I'm so upset, right? The randomness of the password is another important consideration. Using your birthday or your dog's name will be easier for you to remember, but it's also has a lower entropy than a random string of characters, which is harder for someone to guess. Using a variety of types of characters like numbers, symbols, a mix of upper and lowercase letters, all help to increase the complexity of the password. In terms of what the ideal is, you want a password that has a high enough entropy that is basically impossible to guess, even if someone is using software designed to figure out how. Most of the apps you'll have basic password requirements to encourage you to use high entropy, but most people still tend to make their password as simple as possible. One of the things that I always think with passwords, at least it's like a cybersecurity thing, right? Like we have competitions called CTFs, and a lot of the times they will give you encoded or possibly encrypted data. And by looking at it, you need to know how it was encoded or encrypted. So you have to, by looking at the characters, you can usually do that. So if you're using standard letters, that's 24 characters. If you're using uppers and lowers, right, 48. If you're using symbols, it goes up to 64. So that's how I always think, like if I'm using letters, characters, uppers and lowers, I'm using a 64 character possible password. And then if you're using multiple characters, it goes up with that exponent. So 64 to the power of 1, 64 to the power of 2, further and further. I know we're going hardcore math, but...
If these strong passwords are so important, Wade, why do you think that not everybody uses strong passwords?
Yeah, the main challenges are that higher entropy passwords are usually harder to think of when you're creating them and even harder to remember later, right? That's why using a password manager is so important. 1Password, for example, will suggest a strong password for you, and it autofill the log credentials for you the next time you use that app, so you don't have to remember. Sarah, it's obvious question, but I imagine that was the exact problem 1Password was trying to solve back in the day.
Yeah, similar and related. It was just a concept of like memory context. Like, how do you remember all of this? Because we were trying to build a bunch of websites. And so as you're building a website, you have to test for, okay, they're going to fill their credit card number. What if they put a space instead of a dash? Okay, what if they put in their password and it's too short, or they put the space bar in? But then how do you, as the tester, remember all of these things? You want to be able to put a whole bunch of these unit tests together. And then it was like, okay, well, we can't do this ourselves. Like, let's take a couple weeks and we'll put together something that we can use for password management, throw it all in a password manager, and then we just have to click a button. And then every time we try to click the button, it just fills it in, and it helps us do this unit testing a lot faster. And so we put together 1Password for those of you in the olden days, because, we were broke and we couldn't afford all the letters. So when PASSWD came out, the idea was, where can people put all of their passwords and login information and just make their lives easier. And we just did it to make our lives easier. And then it turns out that a lot of other people were struggling with the same thing. So then the rest was history.
And now we're all here.
Mm-hmm.
It's so fun to reflect back on how long we've been thinking about this challenge and when it was just passwords, right? Now there's a whole other credentials like passkeys and everything like that and ways to authenticate that we're solving for. And this feels like the perfect time to bring in our guests because I recently got to catch up with 1Password CISO, Jacob DePriest, for World Password Day. So let's dive into it. All right, returning to the show, 1Password's Chief Information Security Officer, my boss, Jacob DePriest. Jacob leads the security strategy at 1Password and spends his time thinking about where authentication, identity, and access are heading next. Not just for humans, but increasingly for systems and AI acting on our behalf. Today, we're going to talk about what strong authentication really looks like in 2026, how passkeys and passwords are evolving, and what happens when AI agents need credentials to safely operate in the real world. Jacob, how are you today? I haven't seen you in a minute.
I'm good. Thanks for having me back on the show. It's exciting to be here.
Of course. I'm very excited to be interviewing you. We've had this one on the books for a while, and you're always one of my favorite people to talk to. So even if we're nerding out or talking tech, we're going to talk about what good password hygiene looks like. So I know May 4th is Star Wars Day for sure, but May 7th is actually World Password Day. Is World Password Day still about stronger passwords, or is that a wrong framing in 2026, you think?
Yeah, thanks for the call out on Star Wars Day as well. That's definitely the first holiday coming up. Yeah, so I think it's good that we're acknowledging this, and I think password hygiene and identity security hygiene is more important than ever. I think, thinking about stronger passwords versus passwords in general, I think we need to evolve that into the broader landscape of identity security. But it's still a really important thing that we need to do. I mean, we heard this week the announcements coming out of Anthropic with the new model that's in preview. And so I think we're going to see more and more indications of 0 days and bugs that are being found, which is going to lead to more credentials leaking. And credentials leaking are still the number one ways that threat actors get into systems, right? And so I think from my perspective, one of the reasons I'm here at 1Password is because credential security is such an important part of our entire ecosystem, maybe the most important part.
Man, credentials and tokens, one of the banes of my existence for sure. Are organizations still over-relying on passwords when they shouldn't be, you think?
Yeah, so I think it's a combination of things. I think we're always going to see passwords and credentials being necessary for the foreseeable future. I mean, it could be internal systems, it could be SSH keys, API keys, and strong security orgs, in my experience, rely on a mix of solutions, right? And so it's passkeys are in the mix, certainly SSO is in the mix, but I don't know that there's a one size fits all where this is going to go away or we're over relying on passwords because systems are being built so rapidly that need these things. And so whether it's from a personal use perspective, I mean, I have hundreds and hundreds of passwords in my personal 1Password account, and many of them don't offer anything other than a username and password to log in. And I think that's still true in the enterprise space as well, if not for maybe SaaS systems, but certainly for developer systems and API keys and tokens and operations. And so I think it's something we have to keep thinking about and keep evolving our hygiene as we go along.
I know in my personal space, every time someone offers to make passkeys in their system, I just get a little warm and fuzzy inside and say, thank you, please. Thank you.
Indeed.
Please implement now.
And it sure makes it so much easier when I get a new mobile phone every year, every other year. The more passkeys, the faster that whole process goes. It used to take me 4 to 5 hours on a Saturday morning, and now I can get the whole thing done in about 45 minutes.
So much better. If someone is listening thinking, am I doing enough? What does good enough authentication hygiene look like right now?
I always start with MFA when we talk about authentication hygiene. I think multi-factor authentication, like being able to do, whether it's 2FA or MFA, having that additional factor is just more important than ever right now with agents having a bunch of access to things, AI tools proliferating. I think this is where I always recommend folks spend the time. So from a personal perspective, I have MFA turned on everywhere I possibly can. There's still a few outlying accounts that don't allow it, which is frustrating. So I'd love to see everybody doing that. And then from a business perspective, the stronger the MFA, the better, right? Particularly phishing resistant MFA is something that we encourage all of our partners and anybody we talk to ensure they have rolled out. And so I think that's when I think about, am I doing good enough? Like I always start there. Like if you haven't done that, go invest the time and energy there. And then everything else on top of that is a spectrum of things we're all evolving to kind of combat the threats we're seeing every day.
It's really hard getting my parents to adopt MFA, but it's slowly been a process, but I'm right there. So moving past it, going a little more to passwordless for now. So 1Password is at the forefront of shaping standards for passkeys and passwordless authentication. How's adoption going?
I think it's going well. I think, when passkeys first came out, there was this interesting adoption conversation that happened around it, and not everybody supported it. There was a lot of excited security people, including myself, who wanted to adopt it but couldn't because nobody was rolling it out yet. And I think we've gone past that largely, and now it's a lot of my conversations are about portability and how people can use passkeys in an easier way. And so, one of the things that, going back to the mobile phone reset or getting a new mobile phone thing that I've enjoyed is being able to put passkeys in 1Password and have them work on all of my platforms, whether it's mobile or desktop or in the browser. And so I think that's the stage we're at now as an industry, is how do we make these more useful for people who live not necessarily in one ecosystem, or maybe use different browsers or different phones or different desktops. And so I think I'd still like to see more as an industry going forward here, but I think we have certainly gotten over the initial hump, and we just need to keep rolling it out and keep expecting it from the vendors that we spend money on every month, whether it's in a personal life or a business perspective.
Yeah. For a while, the industry's talked a lot about passwordless futures. Do you think the framing still holds, especially with what we said right now with at least passkeys being going, or has the conversation shifted a little bit more?
Yeah, what's funny about this is my answer now is probably different than it would have been even 12 months ago. With the proliferation of things like Claude Code and OpenAI, Codex, and Cursor, and I mean, just the list goes on, we've actually seen this resurgence of tokens and keys and credentials sitting on disk. And so like there was this push to have everything behind SSO in the enterprise space for the last, 8, 10, 12 years. And then all of a sudden, all these AI tools came out, and by and large, they're working with credentials and tokens that sit on disk. And so it's been this really interesting movement where our customers are coming to us on the business side asking, how can we deal with this? How can you help? Like, how are you all dealing with it? And thankfully, this is an area we have a lot of experience in. A lot of the capabilities we're building right now are for those use cases. And then, of course, these agents are going to move back to the cloud, and are already moving to the cloud as well. But the desktop cloud production trifecta is still very much in flux right now, and static credentials are floating around all of them.
The first thing I did when I came back from paternity leave was hook up Claude Code into 1Password, right? And make sure that authentication was going through correctly. And I was very surprised at how easy it was and how fluid it works. And it's very nice now. But I'm right there with you.
It's getting better. It's getting better each month.
It makes me feel the warm and fuzzies inside every time there's some type of talk about this, and knowing that we're working on the forefront of it, and yeah, we're right there. It's so cool. Why is passwordless sometimes an oversimplification of what we're actually trying to achieve?
Yeah, I think about this space more on the identity security front. We've stored identities for the entire history of our company. I mean, we've been storing, I think we have over 1 billion credentials now in our vaults. And we've stored the identities for millions of customers for many years. And so some of that's been passwords, but some of that's been machine-to-machine identities. Some of that's passkeys, and it's just going to continue to evolve. And so I think identity security is what I keep coming back to, and that's shifting again with agents as we move forward. And we know that our customers want us to be where they are. And for a long time, that was on the desktop, and then it was in the browser, and then it was developers working, and now it's with agents. And so that's the evolution that we're taking, because we know that's the space we need to be in. And so, instead of kind of shifting from passwordless to something else, I think it's more about how are we thinking about identity security, how are we thinking about identity and authentication, authorization as we go along this spectrum.
So you said the magic word agents, right? Enter all the agents with credentials without humans. So that's the fun thing that's really occurring. At least I like really reading about this. So let's talk about the next shift in agentic AI. What do we mean when we say AI systems will need credentials to act on our behalf? And can you give a real world example?
Yeah, I think this is going to get really interesting. It already is, but it's going to get even more interesting over the next year. But imagine you're traveling and you have your credit card stolen and you get the alert from the bank that there's been a fraudulent charge and they've canceled your credit card and they're sending you a new one. You don't really get a choice in the matter. It's just good. We want banks to get ahead of that stuff. So you get your new credit card, and unfortunately, that's the credit card that you used for Netflix and Paramount and 50 other subscriptions that you use. And so then we all spend an entire weekend finding as much as we can and then waiting on the inevitable, your account is about to get canceled because your card doesn't work over the next month and a half, right? It's miserable. And it would be great to just hand that to an agent and say, hey, I got a new credit card. Here's the credentials. Here's the logins to all my stuff. Just go make this problem go away for me. The challenge today is, right, like we can't really, there's not a secure way to do that. There's not a way to do that at least most people would feel comfortable with. You wouldn't hand your credentials, or hopefully it's not a physical book, your 1Password account login to a random person on the street and say, like, please go do this for me. And so I think, that's a simple example, but I think it shows that, like, the power that agents can bring to our lives to be able to do these things, but we are still working through how to do it in a way that is trustworthy and that we feel good about and that won't lead to a worse outcome.
I don't know why, but that, like, the physical book part, just like, I imagine some person taking a picture of, like, their password book and then uploading it to AI and be like, hey, go change all my, like, the step in between. They're using AI, but they're actually using a book for passwords. That's the first thing that came to mind. How is authenticating an AI agent fundamentally different from authenticating a human?
Yeah, this one is fun because authenticating a human is something in the security space we've spent so much time on in the last 10 or 15 years. Like, how do we know that the person on the other end is the person we think it is? How do we make sure that they haven't been phished? Like, how do we have hardware tokens, MFA? How do we have real-time telemetry to understand behavior and all these things? But ultimately with humans, what it comes down to is we do all that at the login. We do all that at the point of authentication. And the authorization authentication sort of all happens in one go. And we don't really think too much about intent because we've hired, in the business case, we've hired this person, they work for us, they're an employee of the company, they've passed background check, they have a manager, all these things. And so we've sort of given this employee to a certain degree implicit trust. And so it's all come into one place. But with agents, if we did that the same way and you say, like, well, this agent needs to go do a thing, we're just gonna do authentication and authorization all at the same time. We're gonna give it an identity and log in. How do you know? Like, it didn't go through a background check. It doesn't have a manager. It doesn't have all these things that we've sort of put in place as corporations, as entities over time. And so it's also non-deterministic. And so how can that shift over time? And so this is where intent comes in. And I think we're going to be in a future where the security of these agents and authenticating an agent, authorizing an agent is going to have to be tied to the intent of the agent. Maybe it's the human that kicked it off, or maybe it's the team or the process that kicked it off. And it's going to have to be continuous. We can't just hand the keys over and say, have fun. You're going to go run for a few days. And, like, you've got all the keys to the kingdom, go for it. I don't think we're going to be able to do that in the future because of a variety of things, not the least of which is prompt injection. So in this case, maybe the agent has an intent, you've given it credentials that are reasonable, and it's going off and doing things, and all of a sudden it gets input from a web search, or it gets input from an email or some other thing, and its instructions shift as a result. And now you've got an agent who's gone a little bit rogue, and it's got access to things that you wouldn't want that agent to have access to now that it's not following its original intent. And so these are all things that we're kind of thinking about and exploring, but I think that's the fundamental difference between a human and an agent authenticating.
Yeah. So then what does being in control of your digital identity actually mean in a world where both humans and machines act for you.
Yeah.
Very Matrix.
It is very Matrix. I think we're all figuring this out. In my view today, it comes down to agency and consent effectively for the things that are happening. And so, right now we're unfortunately more in the latter case that I described a minute ago, where we're having to give agents fairly broad access to go do the types of things that they need to do if we want them to do that, or we're having to scope it down so narrowly that a human's always in the loop. And so to move forward, I think we believe in a future at 1Password where the choices we have are clear and that we own that identity ourselves. So we can approve or deny what's going to happen. We can have that consent baked in. And so whether that's somebody working on their desktop doing something with Claude Code or Codex or Cursor, or if it's more of I'm delegating a task to a set of agents, there's still this concept of being able to be in control of what's happening and set the guardrails as the human who's launching those things. That's the way we have to build these capabilities so that we can empower the humans that are on the other side of them to have that ownership of what happens.
Authorize everything, right? Don't just accept all edits.
Yeah. But we're gonna need tools that help us with that, though. We're gonna need. We can't have. You'll get alert fatigue at some point if every authorization that's continuous is a prompt or a notification. People are just going to say approve all, and so we have to build systems and controls that are going to help the human understand. Like, hey, you asked the agent to go do these things. We've let it do 100 of them. 101 looks a little weird. That doesn't feel like what you asked the agent to do. Do you want to check in before we allow it? And I think that's the type of systems that we're investigating, building, and researching right now.
So what are the risks if this is done wrong? For example, someone shares a plain text password to an AI chatbot, or if an agents are overprivileged, poorly authenticated, or hard to audit, which is probably my biggest fear.
Yeah. Well, if we've learned anything from the OpenClaw, I'll call it an experiment, but just a situation over the last couple of months, is that agents want to be helpful and they are very chatty. And now most agents have some sort of memory. And so, when we talk about the risks of this, a very simple example is, let's say you are asking an agent to book an airline flight for you and you give it your airline credentials, and it's a transactional thing. You need to go do a thing. It gives you the approvals. You've given it the transaction. You've had it. And then 2 or 3 weeks later, you're having a different conversation with the agent about a vacation you might want to have, or about visiting a relative or something like that. And the agent's trying to be helpful. And so maybe because it's still got your credentials, you shared it for 3 weeks ago for a very different reason, very different intent. Maybe it goes to start to book those airline tickets for you without you asking. Or maybe it starts to cancel airline tickets you already had and change them because it intuited that it would actually, you said that you had a trip to California, you told it you wanted to go to Japan one day, and so it rebooks you to fly to California through Japan because it's trying to be helpful, right? And so it's a little bit of a contrived example, but I think the point is that when we do unbounded credential sharing with agents, then it's truly unbounded in many cases, and we can't control once it's shared how it's going to be used, and agents want to be helpful. And they're going to chat with other agents when they can as well. And so there's a lot of risk there.
It's going to be a crazy world. So how is 1Password thinking about credential management in a world where not every user is an actual person then?
Yeah. So we're spending a lot of time on identity security and credential management as a company. But one thing I want to say first before we dig into that is I think it's important to distinguish between 1Password as building identity security solutions for AI, and putting AI capabilities inside of our products that touch vaulting. So this is a conversation we have a lot internally. Some of our customers have asked us really good questions about this. We are focused on identity security and ensuring our customers' data remains secure, building the tools for agentic software development and things like credential brokering for scaling AI access and identity. But that's a different thing than putting AI capabilities in our vaulting products themselves. And so that's something we're not doing today. And we don't currently have plans to do the latter, which is folding AI capabilities inside of our kind of core vaulting products. We take that very seriously. we put a set of AI principles out on our website. We can link to those hopefully in the show notes. And we're very careful with how we think about integrating credentials and AI together, which is why we to date haven't put those capabilities inside of our core product around vaulting. Some of our principles are things like we believe that for the reason I gave a minute ago about airlines, that credentials should stay out of the LLM context. And the credential exchange should happen in a trusted space. And so those principles are really informing how we're thinking about our product strategy here. So some of the things we're doing here, we've been focused most recently on finding and solving the credential problem on disk for a lot of these developer tools. And so some of the things we released a few weeks ago at RSA involve that, finding the .env files full of credentials, whether it's username, password, API keys, Claude keys, et cetera. They're all over disks right now. And then having a straightforward way to import those credentials into 1Password, but still make them available to the agents and tools that the developers need. And then we're working towards, that's very much endpoint developer focused right now. And then we're working towards credential brokering that allows more scalable use of those capabilities and workflows and things like CI/CD, et cetera, where the credentials that can be given to those workflows are more time-bound, just in time, things like that. And so these are all the things we're exploring right now, working towards to be able to support the AI use cases that our customers have.
I feel like device trust is kind of a big push, at least for us, with like finding those creds on disk too, right? I know for myself, when I first came to 1Password, I was installing SSH keys, right? And right off the bat, device trust hit me. It's like, hey, no, you can't have those on here. You need them in 1Password. And
Yep.
I'm like, great. Okay. Migrate them to 1Password. And then which worked out. Now they're there. And now I can actually broker them over to my AI agent if it's doing something and allow it. So I feel like that connection right there is super important, super fun. As a security person, it's weird to say it's fun, but
It's a nice experience too. I remember the first time I saw that, it was before I even worked here, and I was like, oh, this is actually like a delightful experience, and I feel really good that I'm getting to like biometrically check my SSH key usage before it goes out and does something.
right.
Which with agentic development, you can sometimes, it's fascinating when they want access to your keys and when they don't. With device trust, with what we released a few weeks ago, which we call unified access, is bringing those capabilities together between 1Password and device trust to be able to do that for more than just SSH keys. So the environment variables and all these other things. And so it's a really nice flow. And, the user experience part of that's always been important to us. And that's something we're continuing to invest in and make sure is excellent, because we don't want to add a bunch of friction to developers. We want it to be a good experience.
I think my favorite part is usually when it does tell you, it has some instructions on how to fix it. And they're usually pretty good. I'm always like, all right, cool. Now I don't have to go Google or ask an AI how to do this. If you zoom out for a few years, what do you hope authentication looks like when we get this right?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's hard to predict anything a few years out right now with AI.
Yeah.
The way I think about this is probably in two ways. One is sort of workforce agents, and the other one is workload agents. A lot of folks are using that terminology. So workforce agents would be agents that you would kick off on your own or would have some delegation of your credentials as a human or as an employee. And ideally, the way this would work is that delegation would be very clear. It would be understandable both by you as the person who kicked off the task, but also by the security teams who are charged with monitoring and securing all these capabilities and workflows. And it would be based on intent, like we talked about earlier. And so ideally what would happen is there would be a system that would be able to understand the intent, understand the authentication authorization needed, and continuously enforce that based on that intent. So if the agent is supposed to go book airline tickets and all of a sudden it starts changing for a new trip, and then it starts changing a bunch of existing trips, that would trigger something that would say, hey, this is outside the intent, and it would block it and be able to really help the user know that the guardrails are in place and that they can trust this to go do the thing they asked it to do and not anything else. From a workload perspective, it's less about delegation from any one person, but then it becomes more complex because the intent might span hundreds, thousands of agents doing activities, but the same principles apply of continuous authorization, looking at intent, reinforced learning, and being able to apply those things to either least privilege or enforcing the access when it goes beyond the bounds of the intent.
Man, just talk about this forever. What excites you the most about being at the intersection of authentication and AI right now? And what keeps you cautious?
One of the exciting things I find right now is it's a brand new space. I was at RSA a few weeks ago, and it was fascinating because it felt to me like AI safety, AI agent identity security with agents. Everybody was on a level playing field for the most part. Like everybody's trying to figure it out. Everybody's working towards it. Everybody understands it's a thing we need to work on as an industry. And so it's exciting to me personally because 1Password's in the mix here, and we believe we've got a great roadmap to solve a lot of the problems that our customers are facing and want us to solve with them, and partnerships to help solve those that kind of go beyond those bounds. The cautious side of me is that this space is moving really fast. A year ago, nobody was really talking about agent swarms and delegated intent across 10,000 agents and spending $200,000 on a weekend having agents rebuild a browser, right? Like these weren't topics we were talking about a year ago. Now we are. And so what are we going to talk about in 3 months and 6 months? And so moving this fast, I think it's a cautionary tale to those of us in this space building capabilities here that we have to move fast too. And how do we balance speed and security? And that's a conversation, as you know well, we have internally in the security team here at 1Password every day because we take that responsibility seriously.
Yeah, I've read a lot of logs recently. When I try to describe like this current intersection myself, like my parents came over recently and my dad was telling me about it. My dad is a very old internet user. Like we had MS-DOS in my house. And he was asking me out, and I was telling him we're like in the IRC days right now at the very, very beginning. And like, we don't even know AIM or MSN is going to come out. Don't even think about Skype. Like, what is the next thing? And that clicked with him because he lived through that time. But it's pretty crazy, all the stuff.
Indeed.
So for folks listening, are there behaviors or habits people should start unlearning as authentication evolves?
That's a great question. I think educating ourselves about how they work and where the boundaries are is really important. It's not just another sort of online technology. Like when we think about intent, we think about agent memory. The act of delegating your credentials to an agent feels a bit like, hey, well, I'm just logging into another site. What's the big deal? But it's really more akin in some cases to giving those credentials to a stranger on the street that you may or may not trust. And so I think that's going to evolve too. Like it's clear that the AI labs are investing in security and tackling these problems as well. But today I think it's something that we all have to have a responsibility to learn and understand how these things work a little bit. I'm not talking about the deep math and all the engineering that goes behind scaling these models and things like that, but fundamentally, like, what does memory mean? How much control do I have over this? When is it going to ask me for permission or not? And I think thinking twice about handing over credentials and how you're doing it. And this is where I would use 1Password to do it, of course, of doing that in a way that's more trusted and more deterministic.
Yeah, I've definitely made the mistake of sharing some dev creds to a personal project of mine, and then didn't realize it had it, and then it just logged in and did some things, and I was like, all right, I need to roll those creds. But definitely happens. Exactly. And make sure you're monitoring your creds. How would you like this conversation to change the way our listeners think about the future of their digital identity and authentication?
I'll frame it a bit in sort of how maybe the core purpose of 1Password, which is the same as it's been for many, many years, which is build a safer, simpler digital future for everyone. That's something that drives us. That's part of the reason I joined this company. And I think it's something that we're evolving, right? We started with passwords, and that became all types of credentials, including SSH keys and then passkeys. And now we're actively building capabilities to ensure that it's still true in an AI world where our products are used in these workflows and by developers and their agents. And so I think these things all tie together, and I'm excited that we're part of the journey here with our customers.
I'm really excited. All right. To close up, where can folks go to learn more about this or anything else that we're working on at 1Password?
Yeah, we are spending a fair bit of time writing up what we're finding and thinking on our blog. So I would start with our blog for sure. We actually wrote a blog a few weeks ago, a few of us, about intent-based security and the future of security. So that's up there if you want to read more, but there's more coming out every week. So I'd say our blog is a great place to start. We're keeping the website up to date. And then on the developer side, we're continuing to invest in and revamp our developer site and keep that up to date, and our open source pages as well. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, once again, thank you for coming and sharing all your knowledge with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was super fun.
Perfect. Thanks. Ba-dum-bum-bum. Thank you, Wade and Jacob, for that really exciting and honestly motivating conversation. It definitely feels like we're moving at lightning speed to be at the forefront of the agentic future and authenticating for AI agents. Sadly, we are out of time for Ask 1Password today, but if you have questions, please send them in by emailing podcast@onepassword.com. We try to answer as many as we can on the show. Now, let's close out with a bit of security fun and our newest game, Identity Theft.
It's identity theft. Guess who they're claiming to be? Fire your yes or no questions for security and catch that fake ID.
Welcome to Identity Theft, our security version of Guess Who. Before we play, let me recap the rules so everyone's up to speed. I, the host, have stolen the identity of a well-known person, celebrity, or fictional character. Wade and Sarah can ask me yes or no questions to narrow down who I am. At any point when they think they know who I am, they can buzz in. To buzz in, they will have to shout either single factor or multi-factor. If they shout single factor, that means that they can name who I am. If they get it correct, they'll earn 1 point. If they shout multi-factor, they have to name who I am and give 2 correct facts about me. If they can do this, they'll earn 2 points. So, those are the rules. Let's see whose identity I've stolen today. Your first clue is, I communicate, but not in a way most people understand.
I'm going to lose again.
Be optimistic.
I immediately had a vision of what the answer could be, and I'm like, no, I don't think that could be it. So, I'm gonna lead with some questions because I don't think my brain went to the right spot. So, are you a human?
No, I am not human.
Are you a sea creature?
No, I am not a sea creature.
Are you an organic thing? Are you a living organism? That's the word.
No to a living organism.
Okay.
Are you fictional?
Yes.
Okay.
Not a human, not an animal, not a living organism. Yes, I am a fictional character.
Do you communicate via electric signal?
No.
No. Okay.
So if fiction, so is it like science fiction? Would you be in a movie?
Yes.
Are you in a movie series? Like a
Yes.
whole collection of movies and things?
Yes.
Okay.
Are you a type of AI?
Oh, I would not, that is not how I would classify me,
Okay.
but I could see how you could get there.
Okay.
Don't understand. You're not the Borg.
Oh, that's what I was gonna go.
Oh,
You're in sci-fi. Are you an android?
Yeah, yep.
Are
Kinda.
you Data?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll guess. Are you Data
Okay.
from Star Trek?
No, but you're moving in the right direction. Also, get off the sci-fi thing so much, but that's the right direction. Where you're going is the right direction.
Okay.
you communicate, but not in a way that people understand. So you're not like a robot that's going to talk English to us. You're gonna.
Oh, okay. I think no. You said get off the sci-fi thing.
No. Go for it. Wade, go for it.
Are you R2D2?
I am R2D2.
Nice.
I just didn't want to box in like sci-fi, but I don't know. You know what I mean? It's more
It's a
fantasy.
it's a fantasy opera.
Yeah.
I get you. Sci-fi opera.
Fantasy
Uh,
opera. What?
It's a space opera. That's what it's. That's the
Nice.
technical
Opera.
genre. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
R2D2 is a fictional robot droid character in the Star Wars franchise created by George Lucas. First appearing in 1977, R2D2 communicates entirely through beeps and whistles. Yeah.
And they also like claiming he is kind of AI. That is also like a deep sci-fi thing. Like, are they intelligent? So
Right. Sort of,
you
maybe.
were riding the line well. And then
Well,
yesterday
because-
was Star Wars Day, right? So,
There you go. May the 4th be with you.
yeah.
Best known for assisting pilots carrying critical data, including the Death Star plans, and repeatedly saving the day at key moments. Fun fact, R2-D2's name actually came from a piece of sound editing jargon, Reel 2 Dialogue 2. And despite barely speaking any words, he's appeared in more Star Wars films than almost any other character. So there you go.
Love that. It just goes to show that communication is universal, but not always the same language. So,
He can get across a lot of motion.
yes, you can. Whee! Okay, well, this wraps up another one of our episodes. So thank you to everyone for tuning in today. We really appreciate Jacob taking the time to come and chat with us as well. I always love having Jacob on because he always explains things in a way that really makes it approachable and easy for me to understand. So I always appreciate that. So for those of you listening, remember that this is still your chance to enter our World Password Day giveaway. You've got until May 20th. So if you want to be in the running for a chance to win one free year of 1Password, remember all you need to do is subscribe to our random but memorable YouTube channel and then comment on this episode with your favorite 1Password tip or trick. And with that, I think the only thing left to say is thank you both for another fun episode.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Wade.
It was fun.
Thank you both.
I actually won.
Yay.